Welcome to the Small Church Podcast, the podcast for church leaders who want to make a difference in their communities. We're your hosts, Tony Marr and Bruce Montgomery, and we're excited to be with you today. On this podcast, we'll be discussing the latest trends, strategies, and ideas for effective leadership in small-sized churches. So whether you're a pastor, a ministry leader, or a volunteer, this podcast is for you. Each week, we'll bring you interviews with experienced church leaders who have valuable insights to share. We'll also explore topics like team building, community outreach, spiritual growth, and much more. So if you're looking for practical advice and inspiration to help you lead your church with excellence, you've come to the right place. The Small Church Podcast is brought to you by Higher Ministries. Higher Ministries is an organization that exists to help Christian leaders in the churches they serve through coaching and consulting, all for little or no cost. For more information on Higher Ministries or to find out more about the Small Church Podcast, please visit higherministries.com. Thanks for tuning into this week's edition of the Small Church Podcast. Bruce Montgomery, it's great to see your beautiful face in person again. It's been several weeks, and now you're sitting right across from me. How are you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm glad to be back. I'm still kind of confused a little bit because there's just no pattern. When you're moving, everything changes every day. And we finally got our house settled, and we're in it, and I can find my way to the rooms I want to go to, and we're getting back to a schedule, and I'm glad of that. But just last week, we went on a journey up into northern Ohio, and that's where I've been a campus minister, and that's where our guest today and I connected. And he's a Timothy of mine. He was a leader of our campus ministry called Active Christians Today, and we had a few hundred people come back for the 50th anniversary, and Jim and his wife Gail were there, and it was just good to see them.
So you had 50 years since you started your campus ministry on the campus of Bowling Green State University.
Right.
Wow.
It's amazing. It seems like it was only yesterday, but in reality, I realize that I'm 50 years older, and I don't think I could ever do again what happened there because I don't have the energy or the mental acuity to do it. But Jim was one of our leaders for 4 years. We had our own worship services and things. We had our own setup, just like a church, a congregation would be, but we were in a very, very special community. We were on a university campus. We ministered in that way, the way in which we did things geared to college students, the music geared to college students. All the things we did were geared to help students work within their culture, to learn about faith, and then to take that out with them. And Jim's one of our really favorite stars, as he went out and has done a great deal of things. He was a Methodist preacher for many, many years, and at that point in time in his life, he changed to wanting to plant churches, and he's planted a couple churches, and he's moved to Naples, Florida, to plant a church.
Well, that's a rough life in Naples, Florida.
yeah, isn't it? Is it rough, Jim?
It is rough. You really have to have a call to do this.
Yeah. Well, see, and Jim has that call, and he has the skill set, and is a great administrator. He's consulted with churches. He's done many, many things, and I think today, what I'm most impressed about is how he's taught me more about the online church. He had the privilege of not only starting it in Naples, Naples, Florida, he had the privilege of doing it when COVID was here.
Wow. So we are honored to have Jim McCleron as our guest with us today on the Small Church Podcast. If you are just tuning into the Small Church Podcast for the first time, we want to encourage you, go ahead and subscribe. We are available wherever you love to listen to your podcasts on all major platforms. You can find us, subscribe to us. We have new episodes that release every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. And so if you are a small church leader, if you're involved in a small church or just in church leadership in general, we think that we have great guests, great insight to help guide you and lead you and provide resources for you to be the most effective version of yourself and help your church to be its most effective version of itself to reach your community and beyond for the cause of Christ. So Jim McCleron is our guest here today. He is a Timothy of Bruce Montgomery. He is a church planter and small church leader in Naples, Florida. Jim, like Bruce said, we're honored to have you today. I was in Naples a few years ago doing a storytelling show, And I got to tell you, you say that it's rough. You have to really be called to be in Naples. And I'm going to start off our conversation by disagreeing with you because that was one of the most beautiful places that I have ever been.
Well, it is beautiful, and I am honored to be here. Thank you for asking me. The beauty of Naples uh, is best seen in December, January, February. Right now in August, it's been 97, 98, high humidity, heat index of 105, 106. So we were waiting for some more rain to come so it will cool down to maybe 89.
That would be nice. Yeah, I take it all back. 97 with 100% humidity does not sound fun at all. I was there in February, so it was definitely the nice season then. So, Jim, you have been in Naples for several years now. You moved to Naples to start a church, and then you're beginning your plans for starting a church, and then this small thing called a worldwide pandemic hits. Tell us a little bit about your journey in starting your church, Paradise Coast, there in Naples.
We moved to Naples 5 years ago. Spent the first year looking around, trying to figure the city out. The only people that we knew in town were Gail's brother. It's my wife's brother. But God called us to come here, so we came. So the first year spent looking around, which end of town we're going to work on, how are we going to meet people, all of that. Towards the end of that first year, I'd figured out where we were going to be and had begun to build some relationships. And out of those relationships, I got some guys that said, sure, we'll help do this. And we started off, launched, was in a school for about a month. That didn't fit us. Then moved to a theater that was close to the area that we wanted to be in and set up shop in the movie theater. We got ourselves comfortable there and then began to say, okay, we got to grow beyond our 10 to 15. We put together a plan that year that we would run through Lent to take us to 50. We started the plan. We went from 15 to 18 to 20 to 25, beginning to feel momentum. People are starting to get excited. And then it was March of 2020. Pandemic stuff all over the news. I got a phone call on a Thursday from the theater manager saying, I'm sorry, but the theater is closed and nobody's allowed in until all this pandemic stuff is over. And when it's over, whenever that is, you're welcome to come back. So it's Thursday, Sunday is coming. I got my 25 people. How are we going to have worship when we don't have a place and no other place is open? Since it's Naples, we talked about, well, can we meet outside, on the beach or someplace like that? Based on what we were doing and how we were set up, we decided that wouldn't work. So, we prayed some more, and I felt led to do live streaming. I don't even know where that idea came from, because to my knowledge, I had never watched a live stream. I just knew it was something you could do on Facebook. So it's Saturday, and I spent all day Saturday figuring out how to do this. And we went live on Sunday morning, our very first live stream from my living room with a webcam. I used PowerPoint throughout the service. So I had my big screen television over my shoulder so you could see me through the webcam and that big screen TV at the same time. So we had the PowerPoint going. Had no music. And like I said, we went live. We had 20 people that first Sunday morning.
Wow.
I had prayed and said to God, we don't just want to survive the pandemic, we want to thrive in the midst of it. So we got started with 20 folks. The next week we had a few more, and the next week we had a few more. And with those few more, a couple of those guys had video and television background. They called me and said, "Hey, let us help you." I said, "Yes." So they came over to our townhouse and said, "First thing we got to do is get you lit right." And they took me down to Home Depot, and we bought pieces, parts. Came back, put them together. Very simple, very crude. We set everything up like we did on Sunday morning. They lit me, and that helped. And some more people came. Our goal was for 50 people on Easter. But God had a sense of humor. On Easter Sunday morning, we had 500 people live with our worship service. And during the pandemic, as long as everybody was shut down, we ran around 400.
Wow.
And that came without me doing any advertising online beyond using my own Facebook page and saying, this is what we're doing on Sunday. I gave a little hook and how to connect, and people came and connected and stayed with it, even though it was a very crude broadcast. God was at work through it.
Well, Jim, we
So,
with our small church podcast, we like to say that our audience, our small church, is churches of 150 or less, and so with your 150, you don't qualify. So, so I guess we can just end this conversation right here. That's incredible.
I came back to your parameters because when the country began to open up, I noticed, we lost 50 from Atlanta. Their church reopened. We lost 25 in Connecticut. Their church reopened. We lost, and we lost as everybody reopened, and we lost down to between 100 and 150.
Wow.
So in the summer, it's more around 100, and during the wintertime, it's 150, maybe 200.
That's incredible, Jim. So your goal was to be at 50, and God laughed at that goal. And even when everything settled back down after the pandemic and doors opened back up, you're still finding yourself right around that 100 to 200 mark every single week of people that would consider Paradise Coast their home church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What have you seen, Jim, as some of the benefits and the challenges of moving your church's activities and services to online?
It was a huge learning curve.
I imagine.
Not to encourage anybody, but you got to spend time learning the technology. So it was lots of time of reading stuff, experimenting with stuff, talking to people. I had a guy that was here in Naples that understood a lot of this technology. So he helped me figure it out and what to do with it and how to make it work. But there was just lots of trial and error. After, he would tell me something, I would play with it and, couldn't get it to work, and then get it to work. And the worst part is you think you have it going, and then come Sunday morning, you put everything together again, and it doesn't work, and your hair is on fire. God's good, and 30 seconds before we're live, or some weeks 5 minutes after we're live, it came together. But it's it's a little hair raising.
I've been there many times. In fact, Bruce and I were there this morning. That we got all of our equipment set up, ready to go. We go to do a test run, and the board is not communicating to the computer, and we couldn't figure out what was happening. And we were set to call in with you in about 15 minutes, and we were panicking a little bit.
That was the first time that we had not gotten anything to work for us. And we were talking to each other, but we couldn't talk to you. And that was a panic for me because I want people to hear what you had to say. God, I think, is in the works of your church. I've seen, I've been there when you've had people. I've been there in your living room when you've had to do a service without people, and they're looking in at you and watching, and you can see their growth. And I'm just amazed how much you've learned, because you were not a techie person when you were in school or coming out in your early ministry, but you learned technology real fast, and God's given you people that you needed. You didn't even know you needed them, but God sent them to you and helped. And I think that's amazing. I think God's really in what you're doing in the work there. And what would you suggest? What would you suggest to people who are still worrying about? Some of the smaller churches have just given up the technology now. They've gone back to the doors wide open, and they've left people online lost without a place to be. How would you address that for people, that not to encourage them not to give up on the technology, but to at least, as they're online, to do both?
Well, the technology is a struggle. I will never be without it again. There are people that we can reach in person, and there are people that we can reach online. When I was in smaller churches earlier in my ministry, there were people that we reached on Sunday morning. There were people that would come to Bible studies that wouldn't come out to the worship service on Sunday. There were people that come to the worship service on Sunday but wouldn't come to anything else. There were people that would come to small groups but wouldn't come to anything else. And every time we added something, we added people. And adding technology is just adding another way to reach people. In the world that we live in today, people communicate as much through the technology as they do face-to-face. And I think the younger generations communicate more through technology than they do in person. With the changes in our communities and how people relate to one another, people don't, sit on the front porch anymore. People are less engaged in conversations when they're out walking their dogs than they used to. But every neighborhood seems to have its own Facebook page or its own online presence in some way, shape, or form. And the way to reaching those folks is going to be through getting in through those electronic neighborhoods and communications.
So, Jim, you talked about how your church was at 500, and then as people started going back to life after the pandemic, that you began to see people that had churches that were attending your church from all over the globe going back to their in-person churches. Did you go back to in-person services at your theater?
Yes, we did. And we had the challenge then of how do I set up what we were doing at home in the theater? And the guy that helped me with all the tech said, what we're going to do is we're going to give the people in the theater the same experience that the people have watching you online. So he had me up on the screen. At first, I thought he was going to use ropes and hang me, but he was able to do it with cameras and connections. But we were committed to the people who were watching us online as much as we were committed to the people who were present in the theater.
Jim, how did you minister to those people online to help them kind of have some sense of community, or feel like they're part of something that's going on?
So, one of the most important things that we did to build community on Sunday mornings is the portion of the service that I call the shout out. In your in-person worship services, Some congregations call it the passing of the peace. Other congregations, somebody just says, hey, spend a couple of minutes and say hello to 3 people, or, that kind of thing. And people have opportunity to talk on their way in and talk on the way out. But when you're online, the way we do it on Sunday morning, as folks are streaming in, the communication is basically one way. But there's opportunity for people to respond through the chat functions on Facebook and on YouTube. My wife monitors those. She also has her phone so that people can text her. And what we do at the beginning of the service is say, say hello to Gail. That's my wife's name. Let her know where you are, maybe what the weather's like. If you have prayer requests or praise reports, please begin sending those in now. We open the service. We sing. I pray using those prayer requests that have come in. Then after that, I have a shout out portion. The people who have let us know that they're there. So Jan and Stratton, Manchester, Connecticut, welcome today. Good to see you. Dale and Diana in Boulder City, Nevada. It's great to have you with us today. Dorothy in Cleveland, I'm glad you tuned in today. Jennifer in Olmsted Falls, good to see you. Put out a cup of coffee for me and just go through the
so you're doing that live. You're doing that live on stage at your in-person service.
Yes, we're doing that live on stage. And I I did it, or I started to do it to help me, because the camera doesn't blink. You look at the camera, there's no feedback.
Sure.
Who's out there? I don't know who's out there. I don't know how they're responding.
But that also is giving the online viewers a sense of connection to what's happening there in person.
Yeah, and that's what I began to learn as they began to tell me who they were. I had pictures. I know some of them I don't. And as I began to do some Zoom stuff and make some phone calls and connect to these people, I found out that the most important part of the service to them was to shout out, because everybody was locked in during the pandemic, and it made them feel like they were a part of something. It made them feel like somebody knew where they were. They said, we've tuned into to other services, but the thing that draws us back to your services is we feel that we're there. The other service, there was no way to connect, to give input.
I think that's really great.
I think that the nature of your service also is very interactive. When you do respond to somebody has a question, when it's there, you can respond to it, and you treated that as if they were there with you, and you had a sense of community. And Carol and I loved that, and seeing what you did with it. But I think people do feel a part of things when you recognize they're there, when you pay attention to them, and that's what you were doing. And I applaud that. And I watched you do it in the theater where there were people, and I watched you do it in your living room doing the same thing. That same sense of community is there. And was it Jose who always took off the offering for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Even if Jose wasn't there, Jose was taking up the offering and going around, and people felt like they were there. I think the things that you created made people feel like that they were in church, like they'd grown up, where people recognize they're there, where they can look at the list on the side and see who is there, and see, so and so's here, so we're part of something bigger than just calling in or just turning into a TV show, that has something that's alive and has community to it. I think that's cool.
Jim, how has social media and virtual events that you may do helped to foster connections between your in-person people and your virtual online people?
Combination of things. one of the things that happens on Sunday morning is not only do they chat with Gail, but they chat with each other. Somebody will share a prayer request, and somebody will respond, online. Well, we're praying for that too. Or somebody will say, we missed you the last couple of weeks. Good to see you back this morning. So that kind of thing happens on Sunday through those chats. The other social media stuff we do, there's a there's an online Bible study that happens every week through Zoom. It was a study that started in an Einstein's Bagels down here. Then when the pandemic hit, the bagel place was closed. So I took it on Zoom and, had to learn Zoom. We had all the guys that were there and then some, because there's nowhere else to go. And a lot of folks, a lot of churches hadn't gone to Zoom to offer midweek smaller group kind of stuff online. So I had a bunch of folks. And once again, as things opened up, that number shrank. But, I've got, between 6 and 10 that tune into that study. And if I didn't do it on Zoom, I couldn't do it. Two of the guys are in Cincinnati. One of the guys is in New Jersey. The rest of the guys are here in Naples. One of them moved to Tampa. Two of the guys are old. And when I say old, I mean 90. And a couple of the other guys are snowbirds, so they're here part of the time and not part of the time. With the Zoom call, we have it set up so everybody can talk to everybody else. There's interaction on the screen. I'll talk for a couple minutes and I'll ask a question, and if nobody answers, I'll put them on the spot. Bob, what do you think about this? How's this worked in your life? And we'll ask questions, and they'll talk back and forth to each other and connect with each other. So there's a sense of community among those guys. They know when somebody isn't there, and they will email or text. One of the first things they did when they realized that this was a long-term deal, they said was, send us everybody's email so that we can communicate with each other during the week.
That's great. Jim, what is the breakdown now of your church's member? I don't even want to say membership. I would say attendees between in-person and online.
So right now it's 100% online. The only in-person people I have on Sunday morning is my wife, Gail, who is, in the words that my folks understand, she's our associate producer. She connects and gives me the notes of, who's there and what they're saying so that I can talk to them. The other person that is there present with us on Sunday mornings is my brother-in-law, Marty, and he's my tech team. Marty's an engineer by trade. So he and I get it set up every morning, and if troubleshooting needs to be done, he and I do the troubleshooting as quick as we can. We take it down afterwards. We talk about, what it is we need to do different next week, and that kind of stuff. So that's my in-person crowd. The rest of it is online.
That's great. That's exciting. So I want to talk a little bit. I know that when COVID hit, when we were all faced with shutdowns and churches were trying to scramble and figure out what they were going to do next, a lot of smaller churches just closed their doors. And many were shut for weeks, if not months. Some shut their doors for good. We had several that we were working with at the time that wanted to make the transition to online, but there was so many obstacles in their way with technology and resources, budget, needs and lack of budget that they had, lack of funds that they had. And so a lot of churches, it took them a while to get going. You went from zero to live in about 3 days from the story that you were telling us. And you said it wasn't perfect that first week, but you learned, you researched, you grew, you added. Talk through the process for our listeners that maybe you're sitting there now and they're not live streaming their service because they're so scared of the technical digital challenges that come with that. They don't even know where to begin. They don't know what equipment do we need to start this? What platform should we use to start this? What streaming service should we use? And what is this going to cost our church? Can you talk a little bit about getting started in the digital space and how the quickest and yet best way for one of our listeners, some of our listeners that may be interested in this to get started?
So let me go about it this way. To get started, you need solid internet connection at your church. You need to be able to have an upload speed on your internet connection of 10 to 15 megabytes per second. Most of the internet companies talk to you about download speeds, and download speeds, they'll sell you 30 or 50 or 150 or 500 megabytes per second, and that's all well and good. But if you're going to stream, it's the upload speed that's important. And depending on where you are, you may need to upgrade from that basic service to the mid-level service. And that'll cost you another 10 to 30 bucks a month over what you were doing.
Yeah.
But without that stable internet connection, you're not going to be able to do it. The next thing you need to do is make sure that you have stable Wi-Fi. And the best thing to do with the Wi-Fi is to have it wired. Wherever your computer is, it needs to be hardwired by a cable to your router. Because one of the things we've learned with Wi-Fi without the cable, it comes and goes. It's fine for watching TV or playing with your computer, and all that stuff is download. But the uploading, you need the cable, you need the wire. And that stuff's relatively inexpensive. The next thing that you need is a computer, and it needs to be a computer that is quick. I can't give you the tech of how many gigs and how many RAMs and all the rest. But you have people, everybody has people in their church that knows this. And maybe it's not somebody who's there on Sunday morning. Maybe it's somebody's son. Maybe it's somebody's granddaughter. There is somebody in that network of the small church congregation that knows the tech stuff. So you find that person, and the best way to find that person is to say, God, please help me connect with them. And then you share with your people what you're going to be doing. You get their buy-in, and then they begin to open their networks and their resources to you. So you find someone that knows what kind of computer you need, and you get that kind of computer. That will cost you somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 to get you one that's going to work well. And it's possible that a particular church may already have one that meets the specs to do it.
You sound like a real techie, and I know you didn't know all that stuff before you started, and so
I learned it the hard way. When we started, my computer wasn't up to snuff. It was just barely doing it. And one of the tech guys that took pity on me said, Jim,
so some of you guys and gals sitting out there saying, what's a computer, actually could do this kind of thing if with prayer and research and help that God sends. And I know He sent you help for many things to do things. And when you start talking about the technology now, even though I know some technology, it seems like it's going over my head part of the time what all you had to do, and looked at the programs that you've used and learned to use. And it just takes courage. I talked to some, a while back, I talked to some ministers at small churches, and they tried the technology and gave up on it and said they'd never go back to it again. And I asked, what happened to your church? And they said, well, it's not there anymore. And you've commuted, you have, I think, began with the Holy Spirit's guidance, almost like in the book of Acts, learning how to find the audience and relate to the audience, and using the technology in doing that. How much do you get? You also do things during the week that are not.
Hey, Bruce, can we go back to what they need first? Because we got through computer, but what about cameras and audio equipment?
Okay.
How are we actually recording and broadcasting this stuff?
So the rest of the equipment you can spend tens of thousands of dollars on, but you don't need to. It can all be done very inexpensively. Our setup cost about $2,000, and that was cameras and soundboard and microphone and cables and computer programs, the whole ball of wax. We got up and going for $2,000 plus the computer. So it doesn't have to cost you a ton of money.
Is there some place that you went to help with all of that? A ministry or a resource that you had to help you know? Because there's so many options out there to know we don't need to spend $10,000 on a camera. Here's what will work. We don't need to spend $150 a week for a subscription service that's going to host and broadcast our service. Here's other options that work just as well.
So there are a couple of ways to find that information. The guy that I used was right here in town. He was one of the resources that God sent me. And I'd give you his name and contact info, but his health is failing. And he's in the hospital today as we speak. And he's talked to me about, we need to package this so that we can share with other churches how this is put together and how they can do it. But when he came up with that idea, it was about the same time his health began to fail, and he's just not healthy enough to be able to get it together. The other place that you can go is the folks at Life Church, lifechurch.tv. They're a great big place in Oklahoma. Craig Groeschel is the pastor. When the pandemic hit, the platform that they used to live stream, they made it available for free. And they have their tech people have made videos about what it is you need, how to get set up, how to do all this. So there's a place to start there.
Yeah, Jim, thank you so much for joining us. It was an honor to have you. And we want to thank you for listening to this edition of the Small Church Podcast, brought to you by Higher Ministries. For more information on the Small Church Podcast, more information on how you can begin an online ministry within your church, visit higherministries.com or reach out to us on social media. We look forward to speaking with you again next week for the next edition of the Small Church Podcast. Have a great week, everyone, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.